Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sports on I40 podcast. My name is William, and this is my co host.
Mac.
And today we are starting our first podcast regarding high school sports up here in the northern Arizona, mostly on the northeast, but we intend on covering probably all sports, but with emphasis on the northeast. And we're not just going to be limited just to 3A. You know, there's a lot of other schools in the 2A and 1A up in this area too that don't get a whole lot of coverage. And hopefully we can bring some of those teams together for you, and it'll bring more to light some of the coverages that people don't really hear. We wanted to start this podcast mainly for what I had just said, that the lack of coverage. I think a lot of people out there are really curious about what is going on with the other schools, and there's been a big change the last 20 years of this coverage. I know that growing up, I feel like really since the internet was still in its formation and becoming what it is, I want to say the only places you could get this information was either actually going to the game, reading about it in the newspaper, or listening to KTNN.
That's it. That was it.
Yeah, so if you weren't able to make it or see the paper, then really all you got to hear about it was just either word of mouth or you just didn't know about it at all. So this new media is certainly great for the fans out there, and as well as people who want to express their opinions and about what is going on, and maybe somebody out there will either enjoy it or disagree, but it just gives us a space for people to communicate about this. Mac, what are your thoughts on this new media and podcasting and the coverage that we intend to give these high schools a chance to have?
Yep. It's a new doorway, man, for a lot of viewers and listeners out there. I know a lot of it's probably covered on YouTube or social media, Facebook, Instagram, but not everybody has that. So some people want to rather listen to. So hopefully this audio or maybe eventually video will kind of reach some of them listeners out there that want to listen on some of this. And we're hoping to bring you I guess not like the real formal information, but like some of the backstories behind teams, players, maybe, and maybe just even how like with all the new like movies on Resball and all that, we could kind of we can emphasize some of this stuff, and even just kind of give, I guess, try to create an image, or even just talk about what Resball's like, because a lot of people out there don't know what Resball is, and I'm just hoping that maybe we could kind of maybe paint a little picture of what Resball's like for some viewers out there and some listeners, and just just go through the lives of someone playing from the Res, just bring some light to some of that. So that's our hopes of this.
Yeah, and what's unique about being in this area is it's intertwined with the different regions. So you have the Navajo Reservation to the north. Then you have the White Mountain Apache Reservation to the south. And in between there, you have the other small schools like Sholo, Snowflake, Blue Ridge. You even have other, Holbrook, for example. Oh, I forgot to mention Winslow. But Winslow and Holbrook, those schools in particular are, border town schools, where you have these schools that have a large enrollment of Native Americans who specifically ride the bus to come to Holbrook and Winslow to go to school. So it's a unique blend of people coming together, and the styles of basketball really get to show themselves when you watch these teams play each other, during the basketball season. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to going through this, and we're not just going to be limited to basketball. Right now, it happens to be basketball season, so obviously that's going to be the main topic. But hopefully, we can expand and talk about other things as we get more informed about the other sports. The other thing is guests. We do plan on eventually getting some guests on here to talk about, their teams, because I always found that I've always been really interested about what goes on behind the scenes, or after a particular game. What was the coaches thinking? Why did they run this specific play, or what was their strategy? Moving into this game, or how do they feel their team looks this coming season? So those are questions I think that don't really get asked too much. I know that there are some of the shows on YouTube that broadcast the game, but they don't really get into those types of questions because mainly the topic of the show is just the game itself. So it'll be good to get more exposures for these coaches. And I think it'll give a better perspective for fans, maybe give them a better appreciation if they know or understand or have an idea of what the coach is what type of strategy they're trying to do out there.
Yep.
But I mentioned older media. When I remember back when the state championship game, the only video of it was it like on not Fox, something on the local channel down in Phoenix, Cox number 9 or something, Cox channel 9 or something like that.
Yeah.
That was really the only video of it, and the other coverage was just radio. So I remember listening to KTNN to some of these games on that were being played because there was no way to.
Yeah, that was the only way.
Uh,
Only way to tune in, man. Even
uh,
even nowadays, like a lot of KTN is pretty much one of the only media that's out there still covering some of these basketball games out there right now. And there's times at work when I'm at work and listening to some of these state playoff games and all that. So yeah, it's like one of the only ways, pretty much.
yeah, I when I think of one, I think of I want to say it was 2005 maybe, or 2006. It was Holbrook versus Straya Foothills. I think it was in like the quarterfinals over at NAU, and the only way I could hear the game was on the radio because I didn't actually go over there to watch. So that's something that brings to mind. The other one that I think of too was Gray Hills versus Rio Rico in the state championship. I think
Yeah.
that was what, like 2003,
2003,
somewhere
yeah,
around
somewhere
there.
there. Yep. 2002, 2003.
So there's a lot of people out there who still remember how it used to be. If you weren't able to go to the game, you had to listen it that way. So, anyways, hopefully this new media will help all the listeners out there, gain a better perspective of it. So, speaking of change, we talked about media change. The next thing we have on our list here is rule changes. Now, I know everyone here, or mostly everyone here, remembers when you had to get, it was 7 fouls in the first half, or in either half, 7 fouls, and you got an automatic 1-on-1 for every foul that you got, and then 10. Once you reach 10 fouls, then it was an automatic 2 from the line. But they recently changed it. Was it last year they changed it, or was it this year? I think it was last year.
Last year,
Last year it became official. They changed it to every quarter. If you get 5 fouls, 5 team fouls, then you automatically shoot 2. Um, so my observation of that is, um, I think it's sort of changed sort of the urgency for fouls. What I mean by that is, if you're attacking, if it's only 5 team fouls, that puts more pressure on the team to try to avoid fouls to begin with. Whereas when it was 7 fouls to shoot a 1-on-1, I think there was a little bit more leeway because he had 7, plus it was a 1-on-1 as well. So even if they got the seven fouls, there was a chance that they would miss the first free throw, and then you'd be able to get the rebound to get the ball back. And that was certainly a fouling strategy at the end of the game, especially when it was close. So I think this rule change is. I really think they should just kept the old way. What do you think?
Yeah, I I agree with you, Will, too, because the time is critical, isn't it? And towards the end of the game, and having 7 fouls would favor, I guess, the team that would be ahead. It would favor them because they'd be in a one-on-one situation right away, and the more fouls that get committed against them, to get shots off. So I feel like it would favor the winning team or the team ahead more than more than the defensive. I guess the team that's behind or whatever. I guess, but that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's changed the dynamic of the game, and especially towards the end, whether it's the first half or the end of the second half, and it when it was the other way, I feel like it made it more exciting because at least if you did foul, you had a chance to get the ball back with one free throw, as opposed to just getting an automatic two.
Yeah,
Um, but
less stalls in the game back then.
mhm. However, like it does put more stress on a team to not get five fouls, five team fouls, because then all of a sudden every foul they're shooting two shots. And have you really noticed a whole lot? I feel like for example, in the first and the third quarter, I feel like they don't really reach the five team foul portion yet. It's not really until it resets every quarter. So maybe at the end of the half, whether it's the second quarter or the fourth quarter, maybe there's more urgency to try to get the ball back to try to either shorten some kind of lead or take the lead. So uh, I guess it really depends on the team and the situation. I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to stall the clock in the fourth quarter for sure. I would see more fouls happening then. But
Mhm.
yeah, it gives the it'll listen to I guess the time of stalling the ball game, and then also with that too is the shot clock, the new shot clock, the new shot clock rule and all that. You see a big difference in that too. And some players ain't used to it. I remember the first year last year, it took a while for kids to remember that there is a shot clock. Even nowadays, some of the boys still, some of the players still forget there's that happening.
Uh, but unlike that rule change, I actually think the shot clock was actually a good idea for
Yep,
ISO sports
I
because
agree, man.
what when I think of the shot clock, when it would have been beneficial, I think of the game Chinley versus Estrella Foothills in the 2009 state championship. I know that I believe that year Chinley was the only team to beat Estrella Foothills at the Flagstaff Holiday Tournament or whatever they have over there.
Pepsi Invitational.
Yeah, Pepsi Invitational. I remember Chinley that year. Chinley, I believe, was the only team to beat Estrella Foothills, and I think that was their only loss to an Arizona team that year.
Mm.
So seeing them play again in the state championship, um, and at that time there was no shot clock, and it seemed like um, the coach from Estrella Foothills really understood that tempo played a big factor in how Chinley played at the time. So what would happen is whenever Estrella Foothills would get the rebound, they would slowly take the ball back to the other side of the court, and they would, you know, 5 or 6 passes before they made a shot or attempted a shot. Um, it also didn't help the fact that Corey Hawkins, I believe in that game, he became at that time he beat Mike Bibby's record for all time points, career points. Uh, but I remember thinking Chinley would have had a better shot at winning. It was still close. I think Chinley ended up losing not by much, maybe 5 or 6 or something like that. But it was pretty close most of the game. Um, but it just seemed Estrella Foothills just really ruined their tempo by really taking their time. But again, at the same time, it seemed like every time Corey Hawkins drove it in, he either got fouled and went to the line or he made some kind of layup or something. So that was they had a really good team that year too. But and I remember Chinley having a good team as well. Um, I think the only person I remember from the Chinley team was Matthias Claw on that team. So man, I guess I'm going, and I guess with my age, I guess I'm going way back. But I'm sure there are people that can go all the way back to the
Yeah, for
70s.
sure. Yep.
The reason why I remember that game a lot was uh, I was in college and I decided to go up. I text my aunt. My aunt is L.A. Williams. She does the broadcast for KCNN. So she told me to come up and she let me go into the game. So I went up there and she gave me a press pass and I got to sit next to her down there while she was broadcasting the game.
Nice.
And the one thing I regret is the game before that, it was Winslow versus Monument Valley. And towards the end of the game, maybe the fourth, I think the beginning of the fourth quarter, I decided to get up and go to the green room to get something to eat
Uh-huh.
because my aunt was like, "You should get something to eat." She was kind of saying that earlier, so I decided to do that. So I got up and I went in the back, and I remember getting the food in the back, and they had TV screens in the back, and they were broadcasting the game on the TV screens. And all of a sudden, I saw all the Monument Valley girls like celebrating on the court, and so I found out they won, but I didn't really know how they won. And then years later, someone uploaded that video on YouTube, and I finally got to see the ending of that game that I missed, that I was there for, but I was too busy eating, and I didn't get to see that wild finish against Winslow back then.
Uh-huh.
But anyways, to go back, shot clock I think is really beneficial, and I think it helps too. And maybe in some ways it kind of gives some of these teams that do I guess the technical, I'm not sure if the technical term would be um, run and shoot or something. I think I said when I think of run and shoot, I think of football. There's a specific type of style of play like that, but I guess they call it in a non-formal term, they call it res ball. But a lot of passing and a lot of up tempo basketball. I think it really benefits those teams who like to play like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, man. That run and gun game, just
Yes, run and gun. That's what
run
it's
and
called.
gun. That passing and shooting, man. That shooting game. That's their game, man. And I think also the shot clock kind of gives some of these players and um, general knowledge or a readiness for the next level in basketball too in college. Because back then in high school, like they didn't have that, so when they come into college, they have to play against the clock again too. So this does help them to get ready. That readiness is there for them. So I think it was a good move for AIA, I believe.
Yeah, you mentioned AIA. They did change the playoff format this year for the state tournament. They now have a small school open championship. And I was talking to the Holbrook athletic director about this. I golf with them every so often during the summer when they have time off. But he was telling me about this change, and from what I believe, it's supposed to work. They take the top ranked teams from the 1A, 2A, and 3A, and then they invite them to be a part of this open tournament. In addition to that, they're going to have a regular 3A tournament.
Yep.
So I guess there'll be two tournaments going simultaneously. So I guess you would expect, I guess if I were just thinking about it, for example, maybe the girls, for example, like probably Paige and Chinley and I don't know, Monument Valley.
Joe City,
Oh yeah, Joe City,
St. John's.
St. John's.
They'd be kind of going up against one another.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I know if you look at the rankings right now for girls basketball, I think they have Chin Lee as the number one, so followed by Snowflake, Page, Ganado, Pushridge, Tuba City, Sholo, Monument Valley, Payson, Altusay. So I'm assuming it's going to be something like top four from the 3A, top four from the 2A, and top four from the 1A, something like that. That would be 16. Was that 12 teams?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking maybe like the top 24 of the whole state. I think I'm kind of thinking that's how they were ranking, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I know because the 4A, 5A, and 6A, they have an open championship as
Yeah.
well. And it from what I've seen, it's a pretty big bracket. It's like, I think you said like 20 teams.
24 teams, I believe.
In the 4A, or in the big school open, I believe if you lose in the first round, you're still eligible to go back to your division's playoff. But if you win and go to the second one, it's you're out, I guess. But so I'm not sure if that's gonna be the same format for the 3A. But
it's gonna be interesting, man.
When talking about this with the athletic director of Holbrook, he kind of mentioned he thought that it would have been better, and I think he mentioned that it would be better that if they took the state champion and the runner up in the 1A, the state champion and the runner up in the 2A, and the state champion and the runner up in the 3A, and then have them do a tournament out of those six. And he said it would only extend the basketball season by like one more week or something like that. to do that. And I don't. It probably it'd be a good idea to do something like that because then it would allow the AIA to have additional games, which quite possibly could be additional revenue. But there's been long speculation about exactly how the AIA benefits from fan attendance. Because if you look at it, I think 1A, 2A, 4A, 5A, and 6A attendance is pretty low. Um, Whereas the 3A attendance in the state championship or state playoffs is extremely high. So there is a financial incentive to try to get more 3A North teams into the tournament so that they can at least probably raise enough revenue to pay for the venue time. And I'm wondering if that's one of the reasons why they stopped going to America West Arena, or what's it called now? Footprint Center.
Footprint Center.
That's how old I am. America West Arena. um, because maybe they just didn't have, they weren't generating enough money to continuously rent the whole entire venue.
Yeah. And this year too, they also eliminated the all the games in Prescott at the Tim Toyota Center. So all the games in the, I guess the first one will be like the lower seeds. Then the next round is at the higher seeds home. Well, the 3 rounds are at the higher ranking home games. So now there's no more Prescott games. It goes directly to the Coliseum. So
Oh, so like the semifinals and the finals is at the.
yep.
Wow, maybe it was just difficult for them to coordinate that time as well as possibly renting the venue to do it.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't really know. It just seems like the the funding or something. I'm not sure exactly how the AIA gets their funding besides from ticket sales. But it seems like it's gone down in quality.
I
Because think about this:
agree, man.
New Mexico is a smaller state. They have a lower population, a lower tax base. Their biggest two cities, right, is Albuquerque and Las Cruces, right? So, but somehow, they managed to coordinate it and they have their events at the pit, right?
Yep.
Which is really nice venue. The NCAA championship was held there at one time. Whereas Arizona, we have one of the largest cities in the country. I think it's like top 10. It's definitely for sure top 10.
Number 5 or something like
Yeah.
that.
As well as, Flagstaff and Prescott and Tucson. But yet, when it comes to organizing these championships, it used to be at Footprint Center, and then it got moved to Glendale Arena, and then now it's at the Coliseum. It'd been great if it's 1975. We have a wonderful time going down there, but
Yep.
that facility is really old, and maybe it was just because it's just cheaper to rent it out for those games. 6A, I think they play at the ASU's basketball stadium or whatever. I don't remember what their basketball gym is called over there at the ASU campus. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly why that's the case. But it was an event. It was not maybe it'll be nice to have fans go to an extra place, but then again, it puts more cost on the fan to go somewhere else, especially if you're a lower seed. So just think about someone from down south. I don't know. Let's just think of a team off the top of my head. I want to say Tinker Verde, but I think Tinker Verde is like
Rio
40
Rico
now.
or something
Rio Rico
like
or
that.
something like that.
Yeah.
Having to go all the way to
Yuma.
yeah, like going all the way to Monument Valley or Holbert having to go all the way to Yuma to play a playoff game. So it definitely puts a bigger strain on the pocketbook of the average fan. Whereas when they had it at Prescott at Tim's Toyota Center, it was sort of like a central location, so it was a lot shorter distance to go. Plus, you got to enjoy what six games, whatever the girls 1A through 3A
Yeah.
is, and the boys. So it was all in one central place, and it seemed like it was more convenient and economically feasible for these fans to go. So I don't know Chinley girls are good this year, so I don't know how that guy that hitchhikes to all the games, he has to add another one
Yeah,
for the, or actually since they're top, they're
the high
ranked
C,
highest.
the high C.
Maybe he want to travel because it'll be
Yeah,
in
you will
Chinley.
be traveling more. Yo,
Oh,
I miss the days back when all the games were in Flagstaff, back at the Sky Dome and the Roll Activity Center, and all the games were centralized there. So like the first, I think two rounds were there, I believe, and you could watch. You could be there for days and just watch games all day long. Everybody was there, boys and girls. That was the time.
yeah. When was the last time they did that? Was that 2007?
I would think so, somewhere around there. Yep.
Uh, I wonder what they did back in the 90s. Do you know?
I don't know. I think it was always there. As far as I remember, it was
Uh-huh.
always there back in the late '90s.
Uh huh.
I remember watching Ganado and Altusay play there, Mountain Valley, back when Bob Manheimer and some of them players were playing back then.
Well, if anybody remembers how it was structured in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, just comment below and we'll have to take a look and see.
Yeah.
So, here's another thing here, another topic. Myth or reality? Do you think it's a myth or reality that teams that play with each other when they're in elementary school all the way up to high school, that they are they'll perform better as a high school team and potentially increase their chances of winning the state championship?
I would think so. If it were me, yeah. Um, I coached some youth basketball before, and just my experience in that, I believe it does, man. It creates a lot of chemistry, a lot of bonding, and I only know like from what I can speak of is like the boys part, I guess, and it does, man. It surely does, and not everybody can, you know, not everybody can make it or stay eligible. I guess like the commitment and all there may not be there through the whole ride, but it does make a difference. To me, I believe like the teams that the the players that play in the off season is where they become good. I don't know whether for be a team like it's kind of hard to say a whole team from one school particularly play all in the off season together, but maybe early on in the like younger teams, maybe like in Winter Rock, for instance, like they got a good group of junior high kids that have been playing together for a while now, and I could see them really advancing and getting a lot better as they age and get into high school. I could see that really happening then. But so yeah, based on something like that, I agree.
Yeah, if I guess if you're looking at it as a whole, or I guess if you're just looking at team chemistry and bonding as one part, then I could see the argument having some kind of merit as being a big factor for the game for the team. However, on the other hand, that's just one piece of a bigger puzzle of a successful team, right? There's the athleticism of each of the players. There's there's the genetic traits um, that come along with it. For example, height and speed, right? Those are
Yeah,
height and speed are genetic qualities. You can train and make yourself faster, but I think there's a limit. There's a theoretical limit to how far you can go with your genetics. Um, if you look at professional NBA players, they're all seems like everyone on the team's at least 6'5", with the smallest people being like 6'2", and then you have the anomalies like Muggsy Bogues that I could think of, or um, who's the guy that played for the Hawks? Won the slam dunk contest, I think in '88.
Spud Webb.
Spud Webb. Yeah, so every now and then you'll have anomalies like that. That, but at the same time, they could Spud Webb could jump, right?
Yep.
So there's that. There's those other factors. IQ, basketball IQ
Yep.
as well is another one that plays a factor to it. So I think if you look at all the teams that we've seen the last 20, 30, 40 years, it seems like every single one of them has a group of young men or young women that have been together, but they don't seem to have a consistent success, uh, a consistent amount of success um, that shows that having a team being together really makes a difference. I want to say a good example. I always think of the Winter Rock team that graduate. I want to say it was the 2013 team, maybe. I can't remember what year it was. It was a team that Kyler Ashley was on, and I remember seeing that Winter Rock team when they were little kids, um, playing the summer ball and everything. I don't remember what their team name was, but my fiance and I we were laughing about, and her mom we were laughing because we all remembered that little team and we were kind of just remembering about seeing them play. But for them, they had good chemistry, um, and I think it helped. But I think they just kind of lacked uh, some of the qualities that maybe would have helped them move forward. And one of them, and one of them, and this is what I constantly see is the lack of height. Um, Mac and I will sometimes kind of make pretend um, spread bets on the games, and I always get sucked into the trap of giving a premium on height. So when the teams we watch, when their opponents are taller, I tend to think that they'll do better simply because they're taller. And it hasn't necessarily always been true, because just because a team is taller doesn't mean that they're skilled, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a balance there. You could be really tall, but if you're not skilled, then it's not going to help you much.
Yep.
But you can be really skilled, but be shorter. Well, maybe at the high school level, you could be shorter but skilled, and you can kind of sort of make up for the lack of height sometimes.
Yeah.
But there is a limit. If you think about the Valley Christian team last year, they came to Holbrook, and we got to see them play here last year. I believe everybody on that Valley Christian boys team was over 6 foot tall, except one guy, and I think he was a senior that year. The one guy that was like 5'10" or something like that. But just seeing the height that they had and the athleticism, they were able to jump. They had one player on their team, their point guard. He didn't he. I believe he tried out for the Israeli national team for the Olympics.
Yeah, I believe so. Yep.
So that particular type of play is just going to be really hard to beat, and I think even with a lot of skill, if you're playing a team that's skilled but also has the height, you're going to have a lot of things go your way. And if you look at how they performed last year, was it Monument Valley and Valley Christian in the state championship last year? Monument Valley had a heck of a run through the playoffs last year.
They did, man.
That was certainly a memorable one, and I know that Monument Valley lost, but I think their accomplishments in those games and seeing I think it was really inspiring, especially when they played Holbrook. Remember, Holbrook played them earlier in the year in Holbrook, and just seeing how good some of their individual players were, like Brandon L. What's his name?
Brandon by Joe.
Yeah, Brandon by Joe. Just really skilled, just really good, and I remember seeing him play and just thinking, man, if only he was like 6 inches taller, you know. And I think we have a player. I've seen some players like that at the high school level currently right now, where I just think, man, if they were just a little bit taller, we might be able to see them on a higher level. I'm pretty sure some of them will get offers to go to smaller colleges, maybe junior college or something. But if they have the skill, they just lack the height. And there's a big premium. There's a big premium on height at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, going back to what we were originally talking about, I do kind of think it's a myth. It just seems like there have been coaches in the past that sort of got players from all over to come to the school. Like I think Don Petronovich used to do that at Winslow with the girls team. He would convince girls from other parts of the reservation to come to school there, and he had a lot of success. I'm not sure. I don't really know the whole backstory older teams or anything like that, but I would imagine there were times when he had team success, but the girls that were on his team, they didn't grow up with each other and played with each other, every weekend during the summer. I'm sure I after seeing a lot of this, I do know that a lot of the players, a lot of the high school students, especially in the north, in the east, they all play against each other during the summer. So it kind of seems like they're all friends, or either they're their cousins or they're their friends. It's
Yeah,
one or the other.
they know one another. Even with social media now too, they all somehow know one another, and that can also be like a, I guess like a, it can work against them too, because like social media can really hype up a person, hype up a team. So when it comes to playing them and whatever, that plays a big factor. Some, especially the younger boys, like just because they see someone on social media posted by so and so or all this, that creates sort of a buzz, and there's a lack of, I guess, like a lack of I guess like I guess kind of scared. I guess they feel scared, and they feel like they they're some superstar online or whatever, and all that plays a factor, man.
Yes, I call it paralysis by analysis. I feel like and maybe you've seen this too, where you've seen some of these young men or women play so well during the summer on these travel teams, right? But then when it comes to the actual season, all of a sudden, they just, I don't know, second guess themselves. That's why I call it paralysis through analysis. They're just thinking so much that I guess it goes into the coach, and maybe I always figured that the reason this happens is because the coach was unable to convey or express his strategy or his what he needs the players to do. And because he was unable to do that, the player gets confused and they start overthinking what they're supposed to do. I would say the way you would look at an offense, whatever pattern you're running for your offense, yes, there's a set pattern. Yes, you want to set the screens. Yes, you want to make the passes. But it's like it's like jazz. There's a main theme, but in jazz, you're always allowed to go outside of that main theme and do something different within the context of that song. So in basketball, even though you're, passing the ball and running through the pattern that your coach wants you to do, there's going to come a time when you see an opening as a player, you see an opening and you're able to divert temporarily from that pattern to score. So, in other words, I think a lot of players get confused with I have to run the offense, I have to pass it here. My coach told me to pass it here. They're so busy and worried about doing that
Yeah.
that they fail to see, oh, I could have, drove the lane here, or if I move here, maybe one of my other teammates can come in and I can do a pass, and it really opens up the offense,
Hmm.
or opens up the defense so that it gives the opportunity for the offense to or the offense to score, right? So I think maybe coaches somehow, maybe that's not something that can be taught. Maybe you just kind of have to see it and know it. Like for me, when it comes to Native American jewelry, people always ask me, what are you looking for? What do you want? Right. And I tell them, well, I don't really know, but I know it when I see it. You know, so it's the same thing I think with the offense. It's yes, there's a play. Yes, you need to pass it here and there and whatever, but you also need to keep in mind and see those opportunities and be able to divert from that play to give your team an opportunity to score.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's like like we talked, we like we kind of conversated a little bit about it, like about res ball and all that. Like some of these teams, how they play, and coaches want a format. They want a strategic way of how to win a game, and maybe maybe it poses how the run and gun game, it goes against that, and sometimes it conflicts with that and what you expect a team to a player how to play. I guess expect a player to play a certain way, and it doesn't work in their favor because maybe the strategy for that coach is different. So yeah, it does play a factor, and you know sometimes like you said, in social media makes a big deal of some of these kids and all that, and there is a factor, man. Like some of these kids will play great in the off season, summer basketball. Man, they're stars and all that, but come basketball time, man, it's tough, man. With the season, there's all these other factors that come into play, whether if it be just little issue like family stuff. Maybe some kids ride the bus back to the reservation from some of these border town schools, grades and all these things all become a factor, man. So a lot of times, like all these things, it goes past just basketball, man. So yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's to me, I see it out there when you can hear it from the fans too, especially the fans that maybe they're their parents or their relatives, and they've seen them play a certain way during the summer or something, and then when they actually see them in the game, and they don't make those explosive plays that they normally do, and you can kind of hear the frustration from the fans that know them. Um, Again, I really think it's just failure on the coach's part to um, express the leeway of diverting, because it's you're running a pattern for an offense, right? And all the pattern is doing is it's a way to get the defense to move or change, shift in a certain way as you're moving. And through that confusion and moving, at some point, eventually, an opening will happen, whether it's one of those set plays where, someone ends up wide open underneath the hoop, or
Mm-hmm.
it's some kind of play designed to, have some kind of short jump shot, a mid range jump shot, or a 3-pointer, right? These patterns are developed simply to put your team in a position and to confuse the offense, because it's confusing out there, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're focused on your teammate or your opponent guarding them, and you know it can be confusing, and that confusion is what gives your offense the opportunity to score easier. And one of the simple things, my dad's an armchair coach, so um, he always used to say 2 points is easier than 3 points. That's the reason, and that the goal should be trying to get as close as possible to get the easiest shot to make points, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but then again, to do that, it's difficult when you're shorter as opposed to when you're taller. So I guess if you have a shorter team, I think your strategy probably needs to be more jump shots and maybe running patterns that would allow you to have some kind of layup as a 2-pointer, something like that. Um, and really, I think coaches don't need to. They need to not limit themselves to one philosophy. A good example would be Bruce Lee, right? His style was no style. It was the style of no style, right? It was his idea was, I'm going to take pieces, all the best things from these different martial arts, and incorporate that into my style, and that's what I'm going to use against my opponent.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to the traditional thought at that time was, you either do kung fu or you either do tai chi or whatever the other martial art. That was what you did, and you only did that, right? And to try to do Greco-Roman wrestling, that was unheard of, and why would you do that? Or
Yeah.
jujitsu, So I think the same thing with coaches is they need to look at other ways to motivate their players and find something that works for them, instead of this, we're going to run the same thing every single year.
Yep.
I don't care if it's 1950 or 2050.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to do it, because this is how I ran it back in World War II or something.
Yeah. And some of these teams, like they study that stuff, and they know them plays, and even just players individually already know those things. I remember hearing talking to people and talking about certain plays that a certain coach had or whatever, and they're the same as it was when back when they played. Their nephews or somebody that played. It's yeah, like you said, a coach needs to be more versatile, I guess, like and just be able to adapt to whoever's playing for them, the kids that are playing, and you know use them, use their talents, and use what they have.
Well, I was just advocating for that, but then you have to consider this though: the strength of your team is only limited to the kind of players you get at
Yeah.
your school, right?
Yep.
It is illegal for high schools to recruit players, I guess, unless they're private, right? So a lot of these public schools, they're they're limited to the players who can come to your school, and maybe as a coach, maybe you see certain players or somewhere during the summer, or maybe you're someone who knows someone. Maybe they can convince them to come from junior high to high school at your school.
Mhm.
And I've always heard rumors of coaches doing that in the past. Don Frajanovich was one of them that I remember hearing about. Um, Raul Mendoza was another one I remember hearing about. Doing kind of walking that fine line of recruiting but not recruiting type of thing. So again, I think if you're able to get the players you want, then it makes sense to have a system in place that you do a set system that you do every year.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking of it in terms of you're not going to get the same players. You're a public school and you're not going to get the same kind of players every year. So you really have to adjust your strategy based on how your team is changing every year. You can't expect to win, with the state championship team you had playing like the state championship team, the same offense the state championship team, won 5 years ago, but you're still doing it now, and the players on your team are not even as skilled as those players that played back then,
Yep.
right?
Sure.
So great coaches, and I'm going to say probably the greatest coach of all time, Vince Lombardi. They were really great motivators. Great coaches really know how to get the most performance out of you.
Hmm.
And those types of coaches are really rare. I mean, I've tried to help with coaching, and it's hard. It's really difficult to do to try
Yeah.
to help. With coaching, some people have it and some people don't, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about it, a lot of these local community teams, it's like someone's dad that's the junior high coach.
That's more like that's usually how it happens, man. They end up taking those teams, whatever, growing up with them and showing them, taking them out of state, whatever. They become. That's how it starts, and kind of doing this for a little bit. It seemed like to me, it's almost like maybe like a 70% like motivation, like you said, speaker, and then like 30% strategic strategy and all that game, especially with the younger kids. It's teaching the fundamentals and all that should be like our practice, and then coming out to the game and all that. You should at least know defense, at least know defense, how a setup is for defense, and then the rest is just kind of pretty much motivation, man. Just talking to kids and keeping them in line, and take them aside every now and then, show them what they need to do, and then. But most of the time, it's like they're battling themselves too when they're out there. They're not just playing the defense or whatever. They're battling themselves too, because emotionally, like some of these kids grow up in homes that are, they're not the best. They're not motivated by parents a lot, by motivated by anybody. So to hear those things, it tells them a lot. It helps them out a lot. And at the same time, I don't really. It's hard to do to them because they can easily break down. They're emotional and those type of things. And I think a lot of times for coaches, especially on the reservation, because we're not us as native kids. We don't grow up in the best homes either. We don't. A lot of us grew up single parents and all that, so we don't have like the mom and dad. So the coaches kind of become more like almost like a fatherly figure. So, do they listen to them more? Do they listen to them less? It's kind of like, it's like that. And it's, it's a lot different. I would see like a team from like Phoenix or somewhere, like a team from out there, like Little League, whatever, City League basketball. That's totally different compared to reservation basketball, man. You got you got kids that grew up in homes, maybe they're only raised by their grandma and grandpa or something like that too. So like there's a lot of factors in the development of a kid, development of a player, and those type of things. You could use it as your benefit, as a benefit too, for like as motivation. Grandma Che told me this. Che told me to he was a good basketball player back in the day, and he was my example type of thing. Those type of things, and a lot of like we said, we're trying to expose, kind of let the world know about this side of reservation basketball and all that. And I hope we can do that, and those little things like the world don't know about. So just little things like that, and how it how it factors into the game is uh is good to know, man.
Yeah, and I think one of the traps we fall into is it's really easy to blame the coach, and probably the coach will probably take most of the blame anyways for a loss or something, right? But at the same time, uh, there's also a player accountability. Um, I think players need to have an individual motivation to get better, and what comes to mind is when you see a younger team, maybe you have a varsity team with, you know, a bunch of maybe some sophomores or on there that are getting some playing time, and you notice uh, their lack of skill in a certain area, like dribbling or shooting, right? You would think that in the off season, that's going to be something that they're going to work on and try to get better at. And sometimes you see players really improve on some of those things, and sometimes you don't, and they come back the next season playing like how they were last season.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big things that my dad always sort of talked about was self motivation. Um, if you want to be good at it, I shouldn't have to tell you to do it. You need to be
Yeah.
able to do it. Um, I remember watching. I think it's called QB1 on. I think it was on Netflix. Maybe I think it was Netflix, where they followed these high school quarterbacks um, throughout the season. I know that one of them was one of the guys played for one of the team. I think it was Scottsdale, one of the Scottsdale high school teams down there. Whoever's probably knows, I probably know. But anyways, basically they followed them around, and there was one guy that ended up getting that played for Georgia, and Georgia went to the national championship. I can't remember what year it was, 16 or 17 or something like that. And that guy ended up getting drafted, I think, to the Giants after that. But what was interesting to see was when they put the camera on him when he was in high school, he got up at I think it was like 4 in the morning every day, um, by himself. He got up, did his little whatever morning routine he had, and then he'd go out and run. I don't know how far he ran, but they showed him running and kind of doing some exercise in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to school. And then they showed another player who didn't make it to the NFL, and I don't remember what college he went to, if he did go to a big one or not. But his mom had to wake him up at 4 in the morning, had to wake him up to do his thing, go run or whatever it is he did in the
Oh.
morning. So you just see those two. You can see just by that, who was going to have some kind of success. Now, granted, this was television, so they might have just shown it like that and edited it to make it look like he got up on his own. There's always that possibility. So I'm not completely saying that that was the case, but certainly it seems like self motivation is a big part in improving and getting better. And
Yeah.
I think when I say player accountability, players need to really reflect on the season and ask themselves, what do I need to work on personally
Hmm.
to get better.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just kind of frustrating when you see players continue to remain at the same level and not do those things that are glaringly obvious that they need to work on.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I like I said, I'm a believer in the off season, man. Like, and the off season, if a player wants to get better, just playing in tournaments, playing ball in the off season don't mean that you're getting better. I believe it's the training, it's the little workouts, it's the routine, that discipline that they can build themselves to become a better player. Because that's what will take them to the next level, take them to, as in level. It's not just college, but it's getting better, progressing every year. A player should be progressing every year from freshman, sophomore, on, and so forth, and they should be getting better every time. And a lot of that, and during that time, they should be practicing and working on grades and all that. Because the future is where what they're headed for. So school is more important than all this and all that. When you preach that, and they should be progressing. And like you said, Will, like the how a kid is more motivated than others and all that, and how they're more disciplined than others. You can see even just in my kids, I could see that, man. One one they may be siblings, but they're completely different kids, and you see that all the time.
Yeah. Um, as a aside to that, though, I think a lot of players who are just naturally gifted, they kind of fall into that trap of sort of not doing the extra stuff to get better. Because I know you have. It seems like every team has one player that's just so much better than all the other players on the team,
Yeah.
and they kind of just get complacent, right? And it seems like everyone gets better around them, and then if they're not careful, they just might be, at that average skill level that they originally thought they were not, you know. So complacency, if you're a really good player, complacency, I don't think you should try to avoid having that, as opposed and just continue to stay motivated and do what you need to do to get better.
So I agree.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I would encourage those players out there to just go out there and really reflect and think a lot about your performance and try to, your coach is there too. Your coach is a great resource. They're all, I think they're always trying to find ways to improve their team. If you have questions about what you should work on, um, then I think a coach is a great resource to go to, because obviously they've been watching this whole entire time and they've been with you at all the practices and everything. Um, Hopefully your coach tells you to work on your skill set and not your attitude. uh, but anyways, yeah. So let's move on to our next topic here. So we recently got to watch Holbrook versus Snowflake at Snowflake, and we first, just disclosure, we've seen most of the Holbrook games here in Holbrook, and maybe some that were nearby. So we got to see Holbrook throughout the season. I guess we're not going to try to be biased, but being from Holbrook, we might be kind of biased. So, but we'll let you be the judge on that. But we want to we want to speak about all these teams, respectfully, and try to be as even as we can. Um, Sometimes bias is hard to get away from, but um, so that's just a little side note there for the viewers out there. But anyways, Holbrook and Snowflake. So the girls' game, the girls this season from Holbrook, I was very hopeful uh, prior to the season starting that they were going to improve a lot, and in some ways they did, but in some ways they didn't. It kind of seems there's sort of like a Jekyll and Hyde type of team. one day they're brilliant, one game they're brilliant, and then the next game they really struggle. So for them, it's trying to manage whatever it is um, that's sort of causing that type of inconsistent play. Um, for example, I think the Holbrook girls team that played against the Ganado team could, definitely, beat be competitive or beat most of the teams in the North and the East.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then conversely, they had a bunch of games where they really struggled. So I think they're having a hard time trying to find consistency on how to play, these better teams. Which brings us to Snowflake. The Holbrook girls had a really good game,
It
and
did.
it really surprised me. I mean, they they were playing like a really good team, like the team that we saw that played against Ganado, and it was really inspiring to see them. It's always great to see young people have success like that because they put in all that hard work and everything. And for me, um, I don't know why I've always just been really inspired by um, great great performances, whether it's in movies or whether it's in sports. It's just really neat to see these young people have success out there and go out there and really play very well and I, I think one of the things, maybe one motivation that players could have is they got to watch that movie Slapshot. Came out in the 70s, but there's a scene in that movie where the the hockey team, the movie's centered around a hockey team, and the hockey team is basically not very good. But then they start making changes because they find out that the hockey team is going to be sold. So they think that if they play better, that the team is not going to get sold. So they start doing things to get better, right? All of a sudden, they start building up their fan base, and finally, all the fans start following them to other venues for the away games, right? And the captain of the team said, um, "These people came here on their own dime to watch us play, so let's make sure we get this win." So
Kind of like semi-pro, huh?
yeah, this was
Jackie
semi-pro
Moon.
before semi-pro.
Yep.
Same plot basically. Um, so for those players, on these high school teams, think about it like that. These fans spent their own dime to get here to watch us play. So let's try our best to at least make it an entertaining game and
Yeah.
one for them to remember.
Yeah.
But anyways, what was your thought? What are your thoughts on the Holbrook girls game against Snowflake?
It was a good game. Snowflake came in there as a number 2 seed in the state based on max preps, and I think Holbrook was at the time like number 15 or something like that. Yeah, and so I knew Holbrook was capable of doing good. They always have that, and coming off of a couple tournaments during the break and all that, they've been busy, and I hope they look like they fixed some things. And coming into the Snowflake game, they had their full. I believe they had their full roster back too. So they had Elena and some of the other girls back from injuries and all that, and they had a full squad finally this time too. So that was a factor, and they played well. They had a good strategy. They kept a good pace. They matched shots with Holbrook with Snowflake, and they hit some deep threes, which really kept them in game and it got them ahead of the game too. So and good performances by the point guards Chan and Jordan and some of these guards that controlled the ball. They did good. I believe that was a key factor to their game.
Yeah, that early lead that they made, was it 10 or 15 points?
I believe it was like 12 point, 13
12,
points or
12.
something, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they had a pretty sizable lead going into the second half, and I think that early momentum helped them um, get the win because one of the things they struggle with, right, is the full court press.
Yeah.
So when Snowflake started to press and they started to get those traps, Holbrook really struggled with the turnovers. Uh, Snowflake missed a lot of shots. They have a player, a girl on their team, their center, that she's really tall. I think they did a really good job with giving her the ball, and then she would just do a quick turn and get the 2 points off the glass. I think if she didn't miss, she missed a bunch of those shots. So I think if she wouldn't have missed them, it might have been a little closer, and it would have been a lot easier for Snowflake to possibly win the game at the very end. But all in all, even though Holbrook started to make mistakes in the second half due to the press that Snowflake was doing, they were still able to capitalize on some of the mistakes that Snowflake made, and they were able to make layups or easy 2 pointers, or the 3 pointers really helped them out a lot as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how they maintain this momentum, um, because the girls they play I think,
They play Blue Ridge Tuesday.
yeah,
this
Blue
week.
Ridge at home, right? And we saw them play against Blue Ridge, um,
At Blue Ridge.
at Blue Ridge. So it looks like they lost originally by almost 20 points. I think 19 points, actually 21 points. Uh, but as you mentioned, they didn't have all their players at the time. So I would expect Holbrook the girls to obviously play a lot better than they did last time against Blue Ridge.
Yeah.
I would say the East for the girls division is pretty wide open. I think anybody could be on top at the end of the season. It seems like Holbrook in particular, they've been sort of playing a lot of non-conference games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now that we're here, now they have all of their conference games in the next few weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have, let me see, they have Blue Ridge, followed by Winslow, Sholo, Monte Valley, Altusay, Snowflake, Altusay, and Sholo again. So, they really have these conference games coming up, and I really see a path for them. I think the biggest challenge for them would probably be in their conference specifically is probably be Sholo and Snowflake again. Um, Not to take anything away from Altusay. I haven't really seen Altusay play that much, and we'll talk about them later on. But it just seems like the East. I think Holbrook, if they minimize the mistakes and they continue to play with momentum, they clearly have a shot at winning the East, or at the very least winning enough to make the playoffs.
They do. They got the pieces. They got a good good squad, man. They got a good group of girls, and they all know the roles by now. And if they could just keep that consistency, man, they're uh they're a winning team. Like you said, they can compete with Ganado. They compete with some of these better teams that beat Winter Rock in the beginning of the season too. If they can keep those same type games, they get a good chance at going pretty far in the playoffs too.
Again, I think I had my thing on mute. So, finish talking about the girls, Holbrook boys. Um, they've had some issue too with not having their whole entire team. I'm not exactly sure if it was either injury or academic related, but despite all that, they've been doing surprisingly well. They're currently, according to Max Preps, they're ranked number 10, and this was last updated on January 9th. So they recently did play some games prior to that. So this might change when they update this on Monday or Tuesday, something like that. However, I think the Holbrook boys, they're a team that I think they get the edge because they have better coaching. And from what I can tell out there, maybe most of the players maybe seem to understand how exactly they're going to, approach a specific team. Because you and I spoke earlier about how there's a set play, a set pattern that they're running, but you're supposed to at some point intuitively know when to divert from that to score. And I feel like the Holbrook boys, they really understand that. At least maybe the better players that might maybe the older starters maybe really get that and they know when to divert from the game plan and do those types of plays. But regardless of all that, I think their edge really comes from better coaching, and they have a better understanding of how they're going to win the game. Because when you look at it, Holbrook boys compared to the other schools, they don't really have the height, but they are better skilled. Most of their players are better skilled when it comes to dribbling,
Yeah.
passing, um, basketball IQ. Because if look at the Snowflake game that they played on Friday, Snowflake, they were the whole team. I think was just bigger than Holbrook.
Yeah.
Um, but I think Holbrook's skills and better understanding of the game, I think, help keep them in the game. And what really, I guess, contributed to their loss was they fell down early, and they spent all this time in the third, late in the second and in the third quarter, trying to make up that deficit. Because didn't they get down to like 20? They were losing by 20 points at one point.
Somewhere around there, like
So when you have to come back from a deficit like that, there's a lot of things have to go well in order to make that up, as well as Snowflake doing, making mistakes or missing shots. So I guess it was a test for them this game, but I kind of figured it was going to be close, and I think you and I talked about that very briefly before the game started. I thought Holbrook was going to win by 1, but they ended up losing by 2. So I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it was just some of the mistakes. A lot of traveling calls were called against Holbrook
yeah.
in that game. A lot of missed free throws by Holbrook.
Man. Free throws would have been a factor, man, for sure.
And yeah, that was a big factor. The free throws. If they would have made, if they would have made just 2 of those, they would have been tied.
Yeah.
Like they had a flagrant foul, right?
Yeah.
I think was it early in the fourth quarter?
Early in the fourth quarter, yeah.
Right. And the person who shot missed both free throws. So that one instance right there, those 2 free points, that would have been a difference maker in the game, and could have potentially either put Holbrook over the edge, or would at least put him in a position to go into overtime.
Mm-hmm.
But even the way the game ended, I know a lot of the fans thought that Tyler Tabot should have been called, or they should have called a shooting foul, based on that last shot he was trying to make at the very end.
Yeah.
And I'm not exactly sure what their thinking was. The referees. I mean, if I knew, then maybe I would bet on these games or something. But it just seemed like the referees didn't want the game to end, or to end on a tie and have to go into overtime. So I think their threshold for a foul would have had to have been more egregious than that. That's just my theory. I mean, who knows? Maybe I kind of seen the refs, the one in particular that consistently has this this I don't know, this problem with being over aggressive with his authority. Doesn't lend well to how people will perceive the way the game ended, and that kind of sort of made my opinion on that was, I just felt like they didn't want to go into overtime, so their threshold for a foul needed to be more egregious than what it already was.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you ask them, they'll probably say no, but again, a lot of these, when you get to know these coaches or you consistently see them, they all have this. You begin to notice their character and their personality, right? So you kind of know how certain refs are going to be, and the ones that were referencing the Snowflake game, the one in particular, he always just has this, and he was like that even when I was playing in high school back in the mid 2000s. So he's kind of always been like that, just being really aggressive with his authority, and trying to I'm the boss out there type of
Mm-hmm.
thing, and I don't really know exactly Um, I think as a referee, you have to be, you have to have, I think, tunnel vision because you don't want your emotions, or you don't want the fans to make you make a decision that isn't fair, right?
Mhm.
So being a referee is a tough job too, but I don't know. Maybe he just had bad experiences early in his career, so it just kind of made him
Yeah.
more angry, I guess, for lack of a better word. What do you think, Mac? What was the biggest contributing factor to their loss? I sort of went off on the conspiracy theory of the referees.
Yeah, it could have been anybody's game. Like you said, it was a little mistakes at the end that got them that loss. But man, that ISO, that post, the post game from Maheim really was a big factor for them, and they went to that at the end, and it didn't work in their favor. And like you said, it could have been called either way. The same thing happened in the JV game. I don't know if you've seen that, but there was a part at the end where one of the boys took a charge at the end too, and they didn't call that either. And yeah, it could have gone either way. And from last year too, from the last year's game. I don't know if you know, but the game last year when the Holbrook went to Snowflake, some things happened over there. I heard that some fans, I don't know who did it, but they put dead ducks on the bus. They threw dead ducks on the bus. Um, some name calling and all that after the game, and all these things are happening. And then I even heard from some of the players that there was some name calling going on too, even during the game from the fans, from the Snowflake fans this past Friday. For some of the cheerleading section, I guess, and things like that. You know, all this is all going on at once, and we don't know all about all this, but I just want to bring the light that these things happen and some of these things contribute, and it's a rivalry game, and I'm sure it's going to be the same way when they come back. And some things happened last year too when Snowflake came and played the Holbrook out here.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I always hear, things like that happening sometimes. Um, it's really sad that a game becomes more than a game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, Especially when, I guess, adults. It's worse when it's adults that engage in that kind of behavior, and I've heard about things happening in the past. Um, so, like I said, it's just sad when it becomes more than a game to these two fans from other places, and hopefully, some of those people later on in their life have maybe some kind of reflection on their past behavior or their past comments, and just kind of realize, hey, that probably wasn't something I should have done or said, or because you know, again, this is just for the young people, right? The young man or woman that's on the team, and it's they're there to have fun and be competitive, but they're not professional players. And I think you and I talked about this before the podcast. It's one thing if they're professionals. I think you can have a little more leeway on expressing your full opinion on people's,
Yeah.
play in a game because they're getting paid to do it and whatnot. But when you're talking about high school players, amateurs, you know, all they're putting in is just their time and their effort.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to remind yourself about that and understand that at the end of the day, it's just a game. But don't try to make it more than what it really is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't hear about that. So you must have an inside source, like
Sor- Sources.
the bus driver or something.
Yeah, I know them too.
Wow. But all in all, though, it was a good game. I know some fans left early thinking it was going to be a blowout. Um, but I feel bad for those who left early because it ended up being an exciting game at the very end. And we'll have to see. I think this is just one loss in their conference, right? I don't think they have. I don't think they lost to anybody in their conference.
Yeah, they haven't.
They
Think
beat Winslow. I think that Winslow and Blue Ridge were the only conference games they've had so far.
I believe so. Yeah. No, it was Ultra Say. I think currently they're number one in the East. Yeah, they get a win over Ultra Say also.
Let me see. Holbrook played Alsace as a conference game.
Not yet.
Oh, so I guess conference wise, all they've played is Winslow and Blue Ridge. Oh, so just 2 conference games is what they've had so far.
Yeah.
So right now, the conference championship, East Conference Championship, is still wide open. I still think Holbrook's the favorite to win the East.
I agree.
Um, we'll just have to see. They're playing, despite, like I said, despite the fact that they don't have a bench. I think maybe they have what, like a 6th and a 7th man off the bench, and the rest are underclassmen, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to disparage those who are, on the bench by saying that, but what I'm just trying to say is, they just don't have a lot of depth, I guess, right now. Some of those players still need to, either get more experience and, hopefully contribute more. But currently, what they have is just the starting 5, and really like what 2 players, right? Like I said, that really get a lot of playing time.
Yeah.
So it's I guess it's difficult to try to sustain, and that's why it's so great to see is it's difficult to sustain a high level of play when you have fewer players in your rotation. And as a consequence of that, if you have fewer players, that means your starters who get a lot of playing time, they need to stay out of foul trouble. And they really haven't had issues with fouls, have they?
No, they haven't. They've been pretty good about it. I think most times I think they come out ahead on less fouls, I believe, in most games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to play Snowflake again. They don't play them until the 31st of January. Another team is Blue Ridge, and we can talk about them next. But I know Blue Ridge. I've seen a little bit of them on YouTube, off the broadcast that they do. Oh, so I know they have a player that's tall on their team. We saw them play, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we watched the game over there.
I totally forgot that I went over there to watch them. So, actually, you know what? The team I'm thinking about, I think, is Sholo. That's who I'm thinking about. So we saw Blue Ridge play Holbrook. Blue Ridge struggled, I think,
Yeah.
against Holbrook boys.
Yeah, they look like really younger guys that are playing on that team.
Yeah, I recognize a few players from last year. I think maybe they're seniors this year. They're still learning and trying to put their team, they're trying to put their strategy together and hopefully get some momentum on their side to win some games in their conference. As far as the Blue Ridge girls, they did beat Holbrook girls, and again, I really think Holbrook had a chance. Holbrook girls had a chance to win that game, despite the fact that they had didn't have all their players available to them.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's just really the mistakes, I think, that what really was the difference maker for them in that game. So hopefully, moving into the conference play, maybe I guess I could say Blue Ridge. I guess what's your? I know we mentioned earlier that Holbrook, that the East for the girls is still open, but it seems like it's going to kind of revolve around Sholo. I mean, Snowflake has a good team too.
Yeah, they're pretty good. I'll just say they're kind of. I don't know too much about Altsay right now too, but I believe they're pretty good too. They're a decent team. I could see. As far as the girls, I think it's going to be between Holbrook, Sholo, and Snowflake. I believe that's what I'm predicting. Well, Blue Ridge is pretty good too. Holbrook struggled with that one. That guard, that small girl, man. She was pretty quick. this could be interesting to see how she does. Yeah.
Okay, so we got we kind of got our word in on Blue Ridge, and well, I guess we'll just have to see how their season progresses. Uh, Again, both sides are still the boys and girls conference is still pretty wide open, but as the weeks go by, it's going to narrow pretty quick, and it's just going to come down to if these teams can gain some momentum to win some of these essential games. The next one we have here um, is I guess we can talk about Winslow. Holbrook girls played Winslow back on the 17th. No, actually, no, that's not when. So back in December, right?
Yeah.
At Winslow. Uh, it was for the girls. It was pretty close for a while. I just think it was the mistakes again that really hurt the Holbrook girls against Winslow.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from the Winslow girls. I know that both teams are struggling, Winslow and Holbrook. Um, so, but what was really the difference maker in that game is I think Winslow just showed up to play and they wanted to win, and they maybe that game came down to whoever made the least mistakes would win, and Winslow just had the least amount of mistakes and were able to take control of the game and get the win at the end. And it really just goes back to, and maybe Winslow the same way. I haven't really seen Winslow play a whole lot of games. Maybe Winslow the same way, but Holbrook again has that problem of what the lack of consistency. So I just want to see if they'll be able to pick it up. But Winslow, I think they still have a chance to do well in the East, because it seems like the differences between these teams. There's not, for some teams there's a wider gap, but for some teams they're closer to even. So we'll just have to see. As far as the boys, Winslow boys, we saw them play against Holbrook at the same time last month. I was really impressed by their center. Do you remember his name? He scored 1,000 career points.
Isaac David.
Yep. Yeah, I was really impressed by him. When we talked about earlier in the podcast, we talked about player accountability and working in the off season. I felt like he really improved a lot from last year. He improved a lot. He really impressed me with his progression, and I think he had a really good game against Holbrook, but Holbrook was able to capitalize on the mistakes they had that Winslow made throughout the game, and they were able to pull through and get that win against Winslow. It was definitely close. Do you remember what the score was for that? I would have to look here. Let me see.
I think it was like a 4-point deficit, I believe.
So they ended up winning by 5.
5. Okay.
Holbrook won by 5 against Winslow. But just because it was 5 doesn't mean it was close, because it was close. I think for a little bit towards the last 2 minutes of the game, I think it was like a 2-point game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, Winslow, when you're actually watching, it looked like they were playing really, really fast. And I was watching them play, and I'm like, man, I haven't been able to run like that in like 20 years. But yeah, I was really impressed by. You say his name was Isaac.
Isaac.
I was really impressed by his play. I remember seeing him last year. He was one of those players I thought, really put in the work and improved. And I think Winslow definitely has a shot at winning the East too. All the teams really haven't played that many conference games. So again, as we mentioned earlier, the East boys section is really wide open, and I would put Winslow as a dark horse to win. I would say don't sleep on Winslow. I think they definitely have the ability to win the East too.
Yeah.
It's just going to come down to, can they limit those mistakes? What are your thoughts on the Winslow boys?
They played Snowflake, I think last week, or I can't remember when. I think it was a week before the break or something like that. But I know they lost to them, and they beat Sholo recently too. I think the same night Holbrook played Snowflake. So yeah, they're pretty good, man. They got a good team, and Like you said, Isaac David, he carries the team. Him and Mahai, our center here in Holbrook, they've been playing together all year, all summer long, man. So they're teammates, they're buddies, and seeing them going head to head was a pretty good show, man.
Are they both from Delcon?
No, just Mahai's from Mahai's from there, and then Isaac's from Loop area.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I notice sometimes um they don't seem in summer basketball. They're like their relatives or something. You
yeah,
know. um, but anyways, yeah. So again, don't sleep on Winslow. I think they have the ability to beat anybody in the East, and they'll definitely have some exciting games coming up for them. Sholo, I haven't seen a whole lot of Sholo other than what I've seen on YouTube, and by what I see on YouTube, just little 2 maybe 5 minute clips of their games. I should watch a lot more, but usually I have something to do at the time. So, but Sholo for the girls specifically, they're currently 4-4 overall and 4-4 in conference play. I remember watching the girls play Paige earlier in the year on YouTube. Paige seemed to handle them pretty well in that game. Chinley as well. They did lose to Chinley. I think I watched that game over there too, and I think Chinley came back right from like 20 points or something like that
yeah.
to beat Sholo. They lost to Tuba City, but it seems like they're kind of turning it around. They have the holiday basketball tournament here listed on the AIA website, and they did lose to Chinley again. But all in all, I think Sholo Girls has a great coach. I think she's done a really good job
Yeah,
with the program over there. Be nice to get her on the podcast at some point and ask her some questions, and really get her perspective on turning that program around. Because I don't really remember Sholo being, at least on the girls' side, being that great prior to her coaching there.
and there was a couple girls that came up too, pretty good. The two siblings, I believe. I think one. I don't know if how many are in high school still playing right now, but I know that was a factor. Two girls.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I heard that I don't know how true this is, but I heard that some girls that came are coming back, are coming after the new year. I guess I don't know if they're not eligible to play before or whatever, but that's from what I heard. But I'm not too sure about that. But they could be better too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as the East is concerned, I think Sholo definitely is a favorite, as well as who was the other one? We said Snowflake, and Sholo being the favorites, and Blue Ridge as well.
Yeah,
I don't want to. I'm not trying to sound. I'm not trying to put Altusay because I don't really know a lot about that. I haven't seen them play. So
uh-huh.
if Altusay fans are listening out there and they're like, "Well, what about Altusay?" I'm listening. Be truthful. I don't really know a whole lot about them yet, but eventually we'll get to see them play here in Holbrook.
yeah,
I think they have played online. They have shown their games online. So I guess we could go back and watch some of their old film to get more educated on that team. So please don't think like we're trying to knock Cal down because we just don't know. So, but eventually we will find out later on. Sholo boys, again, same scenario. I haven't really seen a whole lot of them play. They have had their games online. I know they have. What always comes to mind is I know they have one player that's really tall. But other than that, I really don't know much about the Sholo team, and again, we'll certainly know more as the season progresses when we see them play.
mm-hmm.
But again, despite all that, I still think Holbrook's a favorite to win the East. But it just depends on how well everyone comes to play those specific days. Next teams here. So we mentioned everyone. I mean, we did talk about Snowflake earlier. Snowflake boys. They're they have potential to be a really good team. I was told that they played Safford recently. I think the day before they played Holbrook. Safford,
Yeah, but
and this is girls basketball. Okay, so for Snowflake, they played Safford, and they did beat Safford by 62-49. So right now, I think Snowflake and Holbrook are probably the teams to beat right now. Um, we'll just have to see how that progresses with them, and it might come down. You remember last year, this time or not, late in the season last year, it was sort of like a three-way race between Holbrook, Winslow, and was it Snowflake?
stuff like, yep.
Yeah, and I think Holbrook lost to Winslow twice, right, last year. But then Winslow lost to Snowflake twice or something like that. But then Holbrook beat Snowflake once. Somehow it ended up being Holbrook winning the East again.
Mm-hmm.
So I could very well see it being like that again, where it's gonna come down to the last few games on who's going to win the East.
Yeah.
Uh, but we'll have to see. I still think Holbrook's the favorite. So the next one here we have Alchese. So again, we apologize. I haven't seen a whole lot of Alchese play this year. But they appear to be definitely capable of winning. They lost to Snowflake 34-60 back on January 7th, and they did beat Blue Ridge. So I don't know. It looks like Blue Ridge is kind of getting behind a little bit, but I'm not really too sure. If we compare, I'll just say boys to some of the North teams they played, they did beat Winter 63-57. They lost to Chinley and Holbrook lost. Did you go to the Holbrook Chinley game?
I did. Yep. That was a good game. I'll just say also they beat Coolidge. They beat Coolidge in one of the games. And Coolidge was considered a favorite down in the South too, which was interesting. And also they did lose to Chinley, like he said. Looks like they lost to Payson too, which is also another South team, I believe. So yeah, they didn't seem. I seen them on YouTube a little bit against Chinley, and they're pretty much kind of like Chinley, almost similar type games, like fast pace and that run and gun type game. That's what they play. Looks like, and their players. I don't really know them. I don't know. I'm trying to see who looks familiar, but I can't really tell. So they seem like an underdog, and they seem like they could be coming up too.
What about the Alchese girls?
Man, I don't know much about Alchese girls.
Right now they are 2-5 in their conference. Alchese they they had the successful seasons right in 3A a couple years ago,
Yeah,
and they go down to 2A for 1 year.
they did. Yep.
2A for 1 year. So they're certainly capable of having a winning program. It looks like they did lose to Snowflake by 7. They did lose to Blue Ridge by almost 20. They did lose to Payson by 3. So it's really going to, again, we'll just have to see. I think we'll have a better idea when Alchese comes to Holbrook and have a better chance of seeing them. I know they play Alchese next week, right? Holbrook does, or is it 2 weeks from now?
Yeah.
Oh, they play them on the 28th at home, and then February 4th at Alchese. So by then, we'll have to see. They'll have played a lot of games by then, so we'll have to see where things are at that point. So with that said, I guess we can talk a little bit about the other half here, the 3A North. And if we're looking at the boys' conference for the 3A North, it looks like Page, initially, at least right now, they're 8-1 in conference play. So it looks like the North they played a bunch of games in their conference already.
Hmm.
Um, what do you think? How is the North region going for the boys? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, I could see a lot of them kind of evenly match. I guess they have their own little little areas where they're a little better at one another. Page, I believe, has a height advantage over most of these teams. They got a really good center, Tyree Stingley, and another kid. I forgot his name, but they're pretty. They've been playing quite a bit, and I can see them coming out on top out of the end at the end of the season. Um, yeah, I'd say Chinley or I'd say Page. Chinley did get a win over us, a really close game, and I think with that win over us, they kind of really boost up their rankings in the conference or in the rankings right now. Tuba City, they're a pretty young team, but they're probably just pretty much kind of like Chinley too. I kind of see them almost the same size advantage, the same size, and they're pretty similar teams.
Yeah, the only team I think I've seen on the North is Winter Rock and Ganado. Um, Obviously, looking up here, Winter Rock and Ganado are towards the bottom of their conference as far as wins. So I know that they have a lot more probably practicing to do, to try to help their program. That they're certainly in a rebuilding stage, right? Winter Rock and Ganado.
Yep, for sure.
So hopefully, they can build on that and have a have a better season moving forward.
Mm,
But at the same time, some of these games, they could go either way, and it's the good teams that win the close ones
yeah,
consistently, right? Holbrook plays Monument Valley, I think, next Saturday or
25th.
the 25th. So we'll have to see how that goes. Holbrook already did play Tuba City and Chinley and Winter Rock and Ganado. So that's the boys' side. What about the girls? What do you see for the 3A North girls division?
I see Chinley coming up on top, man. Like they're the top dogs right now. They've been playing some really good teams. They beat Shola early in the season. They did play some really good teams. They beat Ganado last week, which was a pretty good game. They beat I'll just say they beat some of the more formidable teams that kind of they're pretty good in the area. So far they're unbeaten. I think the only team they lost to was a 6A team or 5A team or something like that, and down in one of the tournaments in Phoenix. That was their only loss. And one that's going to be interesting is they actually play Gallup this weekend, I believe, in Chinle on Saturday. And Gallup is considered one of the better teams too for girls, so it'd be interesting to watch that to see that game, how that pans out. And then Tuba, I'm not too sure about them, but I know they are pretty good. They're kind of they're kind of the underdogs, and they're pretty good too. Them Chinle or them Page and Ganado are almost kind of neck and neck right now on records, but I don't know why, but I think Ganado's pretty good too, man. They're 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 it can go either way for them. Monte Valley is considered pretty good too. You can't. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that game with Holbrook goes.
Yeah, that 3A North division for the girls is pretty competitive.
Yeah.
One of the hopefuls I thought was Winter Rock. I really thought Winter Rock was. I thought they were going to be, I guess, continue on for how they played last year. Obviously, I didn't really know a whole lot about them other than what we saw last year, but they had some seniors that the seniors leaving really hurt them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have a lot to develop over there. So I think they they're definitely in a rebuilding season. I wasn't expecting to be in a rebuilding season, but I guess that just shows how much I follow these teams. I guess I don't follow them that closely to know that, but my original thoughts when the season began, I thought Winter Rock was certainly going to be a contender, um, but it's still early in the season, so we really don't know exactly. But the other teams here, Monument Valley was another one. I remember seeing them play last year. One of the standout players, Karen Mann on the team. I we're just looking at just the record here right now as far as conference play, and seeing them sort of seeing their record on paper falling like this. I'm not really too sure. Uh, we'll just have to see. Like I said, the conference is pretty competitive up there. Ganado, we got to see them play in Holbrook, and that was a great game between Ganado and Holbrook. I thought Ganado had a pretty good team. They still have some players. They have a couple good, really good players, and then they have some. I think I don't want to sound harsh or anything, but maybe lack of skill at some positions. They can improve in those positions, but because of that, I think that's sort of not being helpful. But all in all, though, I still think they're a great team and they have the ability to win the East. But I'm not sure how many games they have left because they've certainly played a lot more conference games than the East has. So we'll have to see. Page, I remember seeing them play early on against Sholo. They at the beginning of the season, I thought they kind of picked up where they left off last year. I know they had some players leave, graduate, and move on. Still, they're still based on the record. They're still playing really well, and we'll have to see. Tuba City, they've improved a lot since we last seen them. Because remember they lost to Holbrook. Was it in the second round?
Yep, last year.
It's really nice to see teams that really improve, and they've certainly gotten a lot better. And I remember we got to see them play earlier in the year too.
They beat Ganado last night at Ganado, I believe too. Tuba did that. So just knowing that, they're doing pretty good. They're getting better. They're improving.
Chin Lee had a lot of players that came back from last year.
They did.
And I guess I was sort of expecting Chin Lee to pick up where they left off last year, and they certainly have been doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, obviously, I really think Chin Lee's the favorite right now. Obviously, based off their conference record, they're 9-0 at this time. So, who was the standout player? Her name was Koa.
Koyazi.
Koyazi, yeah. Really improved as well, coming in from last year. And like I said, it's nice to see teams specific or see players, really put a lot of work in the offseason and come back as a better player.
Mm-hmm.
So that will do it with the 3A conference. Normally we would talk about the other ones. There's one team I want to talk about specifically though that's in the lower conference. The 1A is my alma mater, Joseph City, and I know the boys recently won the tournament up there in Chinle.
Yep.
So Joseph City being a smaller team, kind of a background for Joseph City is they're typically, when it comes to boys sports, they're a football school, and they've had a lot of success in football starting from about 1999 all the way until my brother graduated in 2012. So being very consistent in football. I think my brother won 3 state championships in a row, and then they had the state championship before that was in 2002, I believe. So football is a really big thing at Joseph City. And in addition to that, basketball too. They really like basketball over there, though I guess it's kind of hit and miss because maybe it's like that for all schools. You'll have a good group of kids that come in that'll really help your team. So this year, I know that I've seen a few. I watched a few games of them last year because Joseph City's just right down the road. So I wish I knew them more by name. The only one I can remember off the top of my head, Eli James, and the only reason why I know him specifically is because I went to school with his aunts. So, but anyways, they've been having great success over there, and hopefully, we'll learn more about them coming up if we can speak more about it. I know I know the head coach over there as well, so maybe we can get him on the podcast and maybe talk to him about some of their how his team has developed. Where their head coach was his first years as a teacher was when I was a senior, and he taught us
What's his name?
Eric Miller.
Miller. Yeah, his
Yeah.
son plays too.
Mm-hmm.
Cord Miller, I believe. He's pretty good too. I used to coach him in ball here in town, the city league and all that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my brother and I we're friends with all their brothers over there.
Mm.
So, but anyways, the girls team, I know they're doing really well too. They've had, was it 3 straight seasons so far of being successful as far as winning records.
Yeah.
They made it to the state championship twice for 1A, the last 2 years. This year, I know they're playing really well too. I know that they had a matchup against Chinley earlier in the year,
they did.
back in December, and I think it was a close game.
Pepsi tournament.
So it's nice to see, you know, that a local team is also having success too. So hopefully we'll have more information on them coming up as well. I know I plan on, you know, talking when it comes to football season, but you know, they've been struggling in football too the last few years as well. So anyways, so to wrap up the show here, want to thank everybody who's listening out there. And again, just remember, you know, make sure if you're a fan, you know, go out there and support the team, because, you know, these young men and young women, they put a lot of time and effort into their team, and, you know, making sure their grades are up and actually showing at the practices. And I know that a lot of the family members, especially on these reservation teams where, you know, the students have to ride the activity bus home, you know, the parents put a lot of effort too as well.
Yep.
In these students. So, you know, make sure you go out there and support the team for that. I do want to announce that we're going to have some more projects with this podcast as well. I do plan on having another sub show to this. The show is going to be called Sports on I40 Lost Championships. And on this specific show, you know, I want to, you know, interview former players who were on a team that was a favorite to win the state championship, but they ended up falling short. And so, and I do have some people in mind to do that. So hopefully we'll get those specific shows rolling sometime, probably in the off season, you know, when basketball's over and there's nothing left to talk about. We can, you know, bring more of that specific show.
Talk about the glory days.
Yeah. And yeah, we can talk about the glory days. And if there's anybody that, you know, that might be a good guest, you know, you might want to either email us or maybe leave a comment in the chat or something to let us know.
Yeah.
I do want to get my aunt on the podcast too. I know she has a lot of stories, because she goes way back. You know, she can even talk about the Phoenix Suns when KTN had the partnership with the Suns back in the 90s. You know, she has a bunch of stories about different NBA players she got to meet, and as well as working with Al McCoy, who recently passed away too. So I know she has a lot of great input. Plus, you know, she's seen a lot of players throughout the years, you know, and if you ask her, I think her and I talked about it. She thinks that New Mexico basketball is a lot better than Arizona basketball. You know, her and I have had that discussion before as well too. So anyways, yeah. So again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time on Sports on I40 podcast. Thank you.